Guys, what's going on? Robert Warshak here, and we're going to be covering what were the most popular, most powerful OTK slash combo decks that existed this past expansion, the Darkmoon Faire. Let's get into it. First one's going to be the Vargoth Mask Mage. This was pretty popular at the start to midway through this expansion, then kind of dropped off towards the end of the expansion. So the combo itself is you play Vargoth. From there, you'll Potion of Illusion him, which then adds another Vargoth to your hand. Then you play that Vargoth, and then that Potions of Illusions twice, giving you 4 Vargoths in your hand. The following turn, then you play your Vargoth, and then you play Mask of Cthulhu for 40 damage to your opponent directly. Granted, you need to discount the Mask of Cthulhu to 6 in order to play 4 Vargoth, switch it, which is why this deck runs Incanter's Flow. But besides that, the deck just stalls out until that point. Moving to the next Mage deck, a deck that you're probably going to see a lot more on ladder than the Vargoth Mage, and that's going to be the Mage Duelist Mage. You play Mozaki, you play a bunch of 0 mana spells with the Sorcerer's Apprentice or through the Incanter's Flow, and then you'll be able to Arcane Missiles and Frostbolt your opponent in the face. For upwards, I've seen like 80, 90, 100 damage coming out of this mage just because of all the randomly generated stuff. Remember, for every spell you play, Mozaki gets +1 spell power. So if you can play like 15 to 20 spells in one turn, and then you play Arcane Missiles, each missiles is doing like 23, and then Frostbolts is doing like 30 each. So this deck can get pretty insane with the spell power, but it is quite hard to play. All of these decks are prone to getting just aggroed down through Face Hunter or other OTK decks, or just very fast decks that you're not able to basically live long enough to complete the combo. Moving to the next OTK deck, that's going to be the Silas OTK, or the Armor Warrior, and the whole point of this deck is to accumulate large quantities of armor through Risky Skipper and Armor Smith and things of that nature. From there, you play your Soulbound Ash Tongue, and then you give it to your opponent with your Silas Darkmoon, and then from there you would Shield Slam the opposing Ash Tongue, which then your opponent would take the amount of damage you have in armor. Because of the way that minion works with it, whatever damage it takes, it does that to you directly. So while this looks like it's a lot to set up, it's really not that bad, surprisingly, just because of how much armor gain you have, how much survivability Warrior has. And then worst case, this deck has the ability to just win through Rattlegores, because you could play Rattlegore and then you could Mercenary it and make a bunch of Rattlegores. So it is an OTK deck with other win conditions as well. You don't have to just use the OTK. There's plenty of times this deck can squeeze out some decent wins even without getting that full combo completed. Moving to the next Warrior combo. Warrior got 2 OTK decks. We have the ETC Warrior, probably the most common of the Warrior OTK decks that you're going to see. This combo revolves around playing EDC, and then from there you'd Penflinger it or Inner Rage it, and then you'd Mercenary it. You make more ADCs, ideally 3. You have 6 minions out, and then from there you'd play the Broom. The Broom gives everything rush, and then you would attack with all of the minions, EDCs being last, and it can do like 48 plus damage if you do the combo right. The only thing with this deck is your opponent actually has to have minions out for you to attack them with your rush minions in order for EDC to use, for every rush minion that attacks, do 2 damage, and then you have 3 of them out, because again, the Mercenaries. And yeah, EDC Warrior, very, very good deck, probably the better of the 2 in my opinion. Looking at the Shamans, so a deck that we almost probably never see. This deck was quite popular at the start of the expansion, but the core of this deck is you play your Corrupt the Waters, you complete the quest. From there, you have these things called Circus Medics, which each time their battle cry triggers, it does 4 damage. So you'd play those out with the quest. You can do 8 damage that way if you hero power and then do that. But the core is Defiler, and then you'd get 4 of these back because you would be able to tour guide before you quest. So you get 4 medics, and then you would play each medic because they cost 0, and you'd do 8 damage for each medic. Your Dunk Tank is in there if you need a little bit more damage. But yeah, this deck just kind of spits out damage. Granted, it's probably the worst of all of the OTK decks that we're going to cover, but it's still, Shaman did get an OTK deck. It did see play at the start of expansion. It's just not as powerful anymore because some of the other OTK decks just took the shine from it. But this one's quite fancy. Moving to the Druid, Malygos Druid still is an OTK deck that is in the meta. It's been an OTK deck for a while. Core of this one is you use Gadgets and Auctioneer. You cycle through your deck. From there, you play the Forest Warden. Then you're going to go ahead and Germination him. And then from there, you're going to be able to play 10 mana's worth of stuff. So you play Malygos, then you'd follow up with like a Moonfire or something, and it's going to refresh your mana crystals because remember, you made that second Forest Warden. and that's going to give you all the mana you need to go Moonfire, Moonfire, swipe, swipe, and have a Malygos on the board. Granted, again, this is another deck that has other win conditions. You do run Ysera, you have the Geppetto, which can find Alexstrasza to help you chunk down some of your opponent's health. It has a ton of early game spells to deal with. So I have played most of these OTK decks, so I'll have the link to those videos in the description below if you actually want to see how to pilot and play some of these decks. If there's not a video there, that means I didn't play the deck, either because it's just like too good, too popular, or what have you. But a lot of these decks I have played, so if you're looking for video on them, that should be in the description. Final OTK deck that we're going to cover is going to be the Lifesteal Demon Hunter. This is probably, out of all of the decks that we've covered, the most consistent. Fairly hard deck to play, but you can get this combo off very, very early. The deck just cycles. It has a ton of healing. So the core here is you're going to Raging Fell Screamer. It's going to discount your Moarg to 0. From there, you're going to use stuff like Philosophy to copy that. You have Loganoth in the deck, so you go Loganoth, Moarg. You can even be fancy and put the Og Merchant on one of the Moargs on your Loganoth. It doesn't really matter. And then from there, you use a combination of Eye-Beam and Fellscream Blast, and you can do like 46 to like 90 damage to your opponent, depending on how many Moargs and Og Merchants and Blood Mage and what got discounted with Skull of Gul'dan. And even with this combo, you'd think, well, if my opponent doesn't have any minions for me to Eye-Beam or Philosophy, then I can't do any damage. You can just target your own minions, because before they die, the spell effect still triggers. So if you Fellscream Blast your own minion and you hit 3 of your own guys, you're still dealing direct damage to your opponent because Loganoth's ability. So this deck is quite insane, and it can just do an immense amount of damage. So you kill your opponent by turn 7 or 8 most games if piloted correctly and you draw decent. So out of all the OTK decks, this is probably going to be the winner of the best, followed by some of the warrior ones. So with that, you enjoyed the video, or if I happen to leave any really popular OTK deck out that you guys think should have been in here, of course, let me know in the comment section below, but I think we covered just about all of the most popular good ones that we can show off. So with that, thank you guys for watching. I'm Rob, and happy whatever the hell day it is.